What is up? Welcome to another edition of the NFL Fantasy Football Podcast. It's me, your man, MG Marcas Grant, alongside the Fantasy Hall of Famer, Michael Fabiano, and the Fantasy Viper, Graham Barfield. We've made it. We are through the fantasy regular season.
Sort of wild, isn't it?
Right?
So how did you guys do, man? How many leagues do we got? How are we doing?
You know what? I haven't even taken stock of where I am.
have not taken stock either.
It's probably a mixed bag for me.
I got 12 leagues, and this is the most I've had in a long time. I'm going to make it in at least 9 and maybe 11.
Okay.
So pretty good.
Yeah.
Pretty good. And the one league I'm not going to make it in is that Scott Fish Bowl that we drafted in June. And literally my third round pick was Antonio Brown. My quarterbacks were Goff and Rivers. That one was awful.
Don't feel bad because my team in Scott Fish Bowl, and shout out Scott Fish.
I love what he does.
A great tournament, but my team is always trash.
I hate drafting that early.
It is so speculative for me. I'm dart throwing.
I like drafting that early, but my team in that league, for whatever reason, I cannot figure out the format.
I can never get it right. Yeah. I can't, and I do. I love Scott, and it's a great thing.
Maybe it's because I just swing for the fences in that draft the whole time.
It's industry wide. It's it's one of the big events of the fantasy football season is the Scott Fish Bowl. But yeah, man, I can't get it right.
In our annual rite of passage, we just get our asses kicked.
I just can't get it right in that league.
I think our pal Bob Harris, I talked to him yesterday. He's doing pretty well. So
yeah. Bob Harris, who we love, friend of the show. Doesn't he have 30 fantasy teams or something like that?
Dude, he has more than that.
So he spends probably an hour and a half?
He does a lot of best ball leagues.
Okay.
True.
But he also has
I'm in a lot of best ball leagues
He's
too,
in
but
everything.
Yeah, he's in an insane
I don't know how
number
the hell he does it.
It is
God bless him.
It's like having 3 jobs, the number of leagues.
I know.
that he's in.
This is the most I've had in 2 or 3 years, and for me, it's just geez Louise.
Man.
It's almost like I'm happy the playoffs are here because I know I'm not going to make it to the championship in every league, so it gets a little bit easier to deal with. But that's a lot, man.
No doubt. Hey, so now that the regular season is essentially over, there is the Monday night game tonight, which actually is intriguing between Seattle and Minnesota. There's a lot of fantasy assets, I'm sure, going in that game for a lot of folks. But the regular season essentially is over. So we got some big questions, not only for Week 13, but kind of a look back at the regular season. And then on Wednesday, we can kind of start forecasting, looking ahead to the fantasy playoffs. But at least wanted to take an opportunity to look back on the regular season that was, kind of break down some of the key positions and, kind of recap how they were, maybe forecast what we think for them next year. Then, of course, the waiver wire, because for those of you who are in the playoffs, it's no time to just sit back on your laurels and ride with the team you have when you can possibly improve.
Yeah, and also, guys, if you have a first-round bye, number 1, congratulations. Number 2, don't stop going to the waiver wire. Pick up the guys that you're going to need, defense, kicker, whatever it is, for that Week 15 matchup. Because a lot of people sort of hey, I'm off. I don't have to worry about anything.
No,
you got to look ahead, man. Got to look ahead.
Make some moves. So anyway, before we do all of that, though, we'll go behind the glass and talk to our faithful producer, Senior Edward L. Murphy, Esquire. Murph, what's up?
Yeah, everyone, congrats if you made the fantasy playoffs. I know I did, so quick shout out to all of you.
Shout out to yourself as well.
I hope you guys had a great Thanksgiving, and because Thanksgiving is now passed, we could officially listen to Christmas music without being weird, because you have to appreciate the holiday of Thanksgiving.
We actually should start playing some Christmas music on the show here.
My girlfriend convinced me to put up the Christmas tree on.
Good for her.
On Saturday. And it was more that, one, I was sort of enjoying just not doing anything, because not doing things is easier than doing things.
Fact.
But the other part of it is that we have a storage space, and the tree I knew was in the storage space. It was one of those things where when we packed it, we moved in in January, and I just packed the tree and put it away. Mm-hmm. Didn't really, think ahead to December when I was going to have to go get this thing. So I opened the storage space. I see it's all the way at the back. It was just I just shouted an expletive, this is the worst.
Yeah.
So I had to dig it out. But it's up. And, now that it's up, it's fine. It was just the whole effort of doing it. So.
Yeah. It's more work to get all the stuff out of storage and get it out than it is to actually put it up.
Yeah, putting up a Christmas tree is always real. I like doing it super early, but at the same time, getting everything out and about, not fun.
And is there a more depressing day than the day you have to take your tree down, because it's just
so bad,
man.
Yeah, back you have to focus at work again.
Yeah, it's all the fun is over.
Yeah,
there you go. All right. Anyway, let's do some news.
Let's do the news.
Well, I mentioned that Seattle-Minnesota game. And look, if you are involved in that game, if you have people going in that game, chances are you may hear this podcast just before kickoff. If not, you've heard it after, but you've already made your decision. Anyway, it's still big news. Adam Thielen ruled out against the Seahawks. That hamstring still causing problems for him, so he's not going to go tonight against Seattle. I mean, Fabs, this thing has kind of been lingering a little bit.
It has been.
Hopefully he's okay for Week 14. But beyond, obviously Stephon Diggs, Kyle Rudolph, is there anybody else there that you would kind of trust in that Minnesota passing game?
Yeah, I mean, in the passing game, no, although Dalvin Cook does catch a whole lot of passes, so he's obvious. But, no, I mean, outside of that, it's hard to trust any of those guys, right? So and I will tell you this, if you have Kyle Rudolph and you waited and you're playing him tonight, you're actually probably happy that Thielen's not playing because that would be potentially a lower target share for Rudolph. But the Seahawks have been really bad against tight ends this year. We talk about the Cardinals. We'll talk about them again because, geez Louise. But I think Rudolph has a good game. I love Cousins in this game. I mean, Diggs should see plenty of volume in this contest as well. It's going to be a fun night.
Stephon Diggs, man, he's going to blow up this week.
I would think so.
I think he's going to blow up this
yeah.
week. This seems like a Stephon Diggs week to me because they're in Seattle. This game, Minnesota should be trailing, and no Thielen just locks in a bunch of volume for Diggs.
Yeah. Elsewhere, Gardner Minshew is back in our lives again. Nick Foles was not great. Not great on Sunday as the Jaguars lose to the Buccaneers. I mean, they were getting boat raced at halftime. It was ugly.
That was, geez. I had Foles in a DFS lineup. I mean, I figured at worst he'd give me 17, 18 points. I mean, part of it was that offensive line is garbage, and he can't move. So I just kept watching him get pressured and pressured and pressured. I mean, I don't know if Minshew's going to keep the job. We're going to find out about that.
We're going to find out. But
we'll find out.
The day ended for Nick Foles, 93 passing yards. He had 3 rushing yards for whatever that's worth. Had an interception, lost 2 fumbles. I had 1.98 more points than Nick Foles did on Sunday, and I didn't take a snap in an NFL game. But, yeah, I guess that's the question, Graham. I mean, is this now Gardner Minshew's job? I mean, what does this mean, do you feel like, for the Jaguars?
Well, I remember if we rewind the clocks, like a few weeks ago, we were on here saying, like, why are they going back to Nick Foles? And I think, we figured out pretty quickly that Foles, this is who he is. Fabs, you just mentioned he can't move in the pocket. At least Gardner gives you some sort of scrambling ability and ability to make defenders miss and can find spaces inside of the pocket. And Foles just isn't that guy. I mean, Foles has to have a clean look to make things happen. And yesterday that Bucs D-line got after it. I mean, their D-line is really, really good.
Yep.
But, I don't know, man. Like, the Jags spent over $100 million on Blake Bortles and Andrew Norwell and Nick Foles and all these dudes combined. So I get that they had to give Foles, like there's like a bit of a sunk cost fallacy with Foles, but at the same time, Gardner has just acquitted himself at every turn, and he's super cheap, and I have to think that the Jags will most likely be rolling with Minshew as their starter next year.
I mean, I think that's the bigger question, right? At least for Jacksonville,
they should be
at
least.
Question, right? Like they got to consider seriously giving Minshew the starting job, which means they just end up sort of eating
the Jags,
a good chunk of that contract.
The Jags, they'll probably have to. The Jags are going to be in another state of like turnover this offseason because their head coach Doug Marrone's not going to be around next year, and I don't know. I think Gardner has deserved a shot to be their week 1 starter in 2020.
No doubt. I mean, look, none of us knew what to expect from Gardner Minshew. He came in a time of need for the Jaguars after Foles got hurt in week 1, and like you said, he acquitted himself very well in that offense there. More quarterback, not necessarily news, but Patrick Mahomes was human yet again. He had another game with under 20 points. I know, Fabs, this sort of grinds your gears with what's going on with old Patty Mahomes this year.
Yeah, it's funny because the start of the season was tremendous for Mahomes. He had 27+ in 3 straight, had 31 in week 2 against Oakland. But since then, guys, he's had more than 19 points once. And this is, I'm not saying he's a bust, okay? I'm saying that if you drafted him in the first round, and a lot of people in the industry did not, right? But there are people that drafted him highly. This is just another lesson in you don't draft a quarterback too soon. And we will have this conversation about Lamar Jackson next year. Lamar Jackson is not going to be worth a first-round pick or a second-round pick next year. He'll probably go in the first or second round in a lot of leagues. I get it. But just keep this in mind, okay? Patrick Mahomes is averaging 5 fewer fantasy points per game this year than he did last year. We all sort of talked about the regression because he had the best fantasy season ever at the quarterback spot. But I was one of those people who said, listen, I'm never going to get Mahomes because he's going too early. And, I mean, you look at his numbers, like, lately, he's Ryan Tannehill. Okay, but Ryan Tannehill's been really good for Ryan Tannehill. So what I'm saying is that, not that Mahomes is not a must-start because he is every single week, because he always has the potential to put up those huge numbers, but just keep this in mind next year when you guys are drafting, all right? This is a player who's given you, since week 4, 18, 18.8. Then he got hurt. He had 29 against Tennessee, which is obviously tremendous. Then he had 15 and then 19. Now, for most mortal quarterbacks, pretty good. Not for Patrick Mahomes, not where you drafted him.
Except, okay, so my counterpoint to this, right, my devil's advocate to this is the variance has been very low, relatively speaking. He's missed basically 3 games, right? He played, a quarter of that Denver game before he got hurt.
Yep.
He's missed 3 games, essentially. He's still the QB8. That 5 points a game is essentially a touchdown pass per game, when we all expected the touchdown regression to happen. I think part of the pro of drafting a quarterback early, if that's your strategy, is that's just peace of mind of having that guy in there and knowing you can get a solid floor from each and every week. And Patrick Mahomes has still sort of I get the opportunity cost of drafting a quarterback early. I totally do.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But there is still that peace of mind of doing that, because you look at the variance of pretty much everybody not named Lamar Jackson, right? The highs and lows have been there.
I was going to say Lamar Jackson is really going to test my own late-round quarterback status next year, because the floor is just insane for him. I mean, Lamar had a terrible passing day yesterday for his standards.
Right. Well, in the rain, yeah.
In the rain against the Niners, only had 100 yards passing, right? But he still scored over 25 fantasy points because he's just God.
But keep this in mind. This is what we were saying about Patrick Mahomes last year, that he is God. He's the greatest thing.
Well, the difference between Lamar and Mahomes is Lamar runs.
I get it. But that also puts Lamar in more danger to potentially get hurt. And so next year we're going to have this conversation.
Patrick Mahomes doesn't run and he still got hurt.
Everyone's in danger
I get it.
of getting hurt in the NFL.
But when you're a running quarterback, I feel like the percentages are a little bit higher.
Yeah, well, when you're Lamar Jackson and you're so sudden and
He's
so
awesome.
fast,
nobody
can catch you.
I always talk about the magical season and how magical seasons are never duplicated.
Yeah.
Mahomes has proven that again.
Right.
Listen,
no doubt.
I'm just saying.
Yeah.
So
I don't think anybody expected Mahomes to throw 50 scores again.
But I also feel like they were expecting him to be a guy who's still giving you 20 a game. Which he's not right now.
18 ain't that far away.
Yeah. That game yesterday was so weird. I watched a good bit of
it was all
that
all the
Raiders
Chiefs running backs scored.
They didn't need him to do a lot.
That's what I was about to say. Is the Raiders had the ball a ton. When they got the ball, they sat on it and just ran and grinded the clock down with Josh Jacobs. And Josh Jacobs had a decent game, but Mahomes only needed to throw 29 times yesterday. In the fourth quarter, Mahomes was still in there, but the game was still salted away.
And next week, you and I probably talked about this on Friday, but
Pats, Chiefs, man.
Yeah, although the Pats.
Yeah. That didn't quite work out.
Did it? God. That team does not look like a Super Bowl contending team. And Tom Brady knows it. And I'm telling you right now, he's texting Robert Kraft. He's calling Robert Kraft and be like, listen,
look, man,
can you get Antonio Brown back in here for me, please?
We've been through this too many. They're like a horror movie monster, man. Until you separate the head from the body.
That's true.
We've been.
Although they actually did that to Michael Myers in H2O, and he still
came back. I mean, we've every year we kick dirt.
I don't know that it was Michael Myers.
We kick dirt on the Patriots' grave, and then the hand comes shooting up through the ground one last time.
That's true.
Some good news, because we need some good tight end news in our life. Austin Hooper is set to return to practice on Monday.
Hooper?
Now, the Falcons are officially eliminated from playoff contention, so their season, for all intents and purposes, is over. But I would imagine if you're Dan Quinn, you're still playing Matt Ryan. You're playing Julio Jones. You're going to play Austin Hooper and Devontae Freeman because you are coaching for your job right now, or at least auditioning potentially for a head coaching job somewhere else. So, I mean, look, Graham, we need tight end help. So Austin Hooper, if he's back on the field, he's back in your lineup.
No doubt. And I guess our friend Jaden Graham, who is a Thanksgiving Day slate. Our friend Jaden Graham was a DFS darling on the Thanksgiving slate there with no tight ends on that 3-game slate. But no, yeah, if Austin Hooper's back this week, he's definitely back in your lineup just because the position itself is so thin. And before Hooper went down, I mean, he was leading the league at the position receptions. Been a PPR stud this year.
So if Hooper returns, Does that make you trust Matt Ryan more against Carolina? Because he's been brutal. His offensive line is awful.
He needs the help, man. Julio's less than 100%. If Hooper's back, I think it definitely helps. He's not going to have to throw to these like 4th and 5th string receivers for sure.
Ryan hasn't scored more than 16.5 points since, week 6.
Yeah, it's been a while.
Carolina this week. I don't know, man. I already got to start, right and start him and sit him Mondays because everything is just insane in season. And I think he's going to go in the sit. Can you go into your first playoff week with Matt Ryan?
No, you're not doing that.
Especially if Julio's still less than 100%. Which, by the way, if
do not want
with the Falcons out of playoff contention, I do wonder if Julio's kind of been banged up, and I wonder if they give him some rest now.
If they just shut him down at some point, and that's a conversation that I know maybe we have that too on Wednesday when we kind of start looking ahead to the playoffs about guys.
Evan Ingram could be another guy too.
Right, teams just start shutting guys down as they are eliminated from playoff contention as their seasons sort of spiral out of control, and there's no reason to risk some of these guys that you imagine to be the future.
And on the flip side, you're going to start to see younger guys get more opportunities. Darius freaking Geis. Oh, I was so happy. I was so proud of him yesterday, dude.
That run,
as Graham Barfield says, he smashed.
That run he had where he
smashed.
I mean, he ethered.
Yeah, man. He was
Shaq Thompson into the ground.
He was stealing souls yesterday.
He
was awesome.
Shaq Thompson.
They got Green Bay coming up, I believe. So
he was great. And this just kind of was I just at some point I would like for Washington to actually give him a decent
It's not
number.
Good.
He had 10 carries. I mean, so it was great that he had 2 big runs.
The
volume needs to be there.
They're going to keep giving Adrian Peterson the ball.
How did good for Darius and stuff like that, but how do you lose that game if you're Carolina, dude? I mean,
they're a bad team.
Oh my goodness gracious!
Team.
Jeez, we got to talk about Terry McLaurin too. Like, is he even rosterable at this point?
Not with Dwayne Haskins.
So good, so much talent, and just
big difference between Washington and Columbus.
That's true.
Just saying.
Yeah,
just saying. Last little piece of news. Not a big deal. Hopefully everything's going to be okay. But Baker Mayfield not expected to miss any time. In case you saw, he on a follow-through hit his hand on Bud Dupree's helmet as Dupree was coming in to rush the passer. So it's the second time in 3 weeks that a Steeler helmet has caused mayhem to a quarterback.
Yeah, that's very true. Very true. He's got Cincinnati in Cleveland coming up. So Baker's a legit start.
Speaking of games that that team shouldn't have lost, come on, man.
How did the Browns lose?
How did the Browns
they got 20 points in a row or something?
It wasn't
Duck
even
Hodges. Cleveland's just not that good. That's just. And Pittsburgh is like in the playoffs right now. I mean, not going anywhere, but they're in the playoffs right now.
Both
crazy, dude.
Both the Browns and the Chargers can commiserate over losing games to Duck Hodges.
The Browns lose to Devlin Hodges throwing 20 passes and Benny the Snell getting 16 carries.
How about you? Did you just mention the Chargers? I mean, this team every season comes up with new ways to lose football games.
Kudos to them for finding a new and creative way to lose one.
And do you remember the commentators in that game were saying, "Oh yeah, they're going to play for overtime. They're just going to sit on the ball."
Yeah, Drew Luck's
wait a minute, no, wait. They're in formation where they're going to throw the football.
We're going to do the all PI offense.
And Drew Luck, I will say, surprised me because all we heard about him was that he wasn't ready, and he went out there and played pretty good against a tough pass defense. And Cortland Sutton, and I said this weeks and weeks ago, I mean, he's basically a must start now. This guy, where's he going to go next year in drafts? Cortland Sutton. I mean, this dude is
fourth round.
Awesome.
I'm going to say fourth round.
Love Cortland Sutton.
Something like that.
He's just tremendous.
Yeah, I'm curious to see how Drew Lock finishes out the season too, because that might impact it just a little bit.
Yeah.
All right, there you go. That's pretty much everything you need to know.
That was the news.
All right, some of the big questions that Week 13 left us with as we kind of come to the end of the fantasy regular season. The first one is we're not buying into Jared Goff, right? I mean, he was great yesterday, but that was more about the Cardinals' defense being bad than it was about Jared Goff being.
Yeah,
right?
If you played him in DFS or if you streamed them, congrats.
I was gonna say, how many people even took advantage?
The matchup
of it, right?
was there. I know. I was afraid of him too. I mean, I only have him in one league, which is the Scott Fish Bowl. Maybe I actually won this week. We'll see. But I mean, you got Seattle next week. I don't know, man. Like that's just that in the playoffs. I just keep hearing Jim Moore in my head. I just can't trust Jared Goff. I mean, you're not getting another matchup like you had this week against Arizona. You've got this week you got Seattle, then you got Dallas. Oh man, we're gonna lose to the Rams. And then after that, in Week 16 at San Francisco. So I mean, at this point, if Goff was your quarterback, you could actually probably cut him.
How pissed off was Sean McVay yesterday? Do you think? I mean, he's just like, you know what? I am so tired of hearing the crap that we can't move the ball anymore, and they go into Arizona and just put up
and just monster pounded them, just pounded them.
500 yards of total offense.
I mean, Greg Rosenthal made the point on Twitter
nearly.
That there was a legitimate chance for Jared Goff at one point to break the single game passing record. Like he was zeroing in on Norm Van Brocklin. That's how on fire he was. I think eventually they started running the ball, then they put in Bortles, and it was all over.
Yeah, I think by the end of the first quarter, I almost remember seeing him have like 150 or 200 yards just by like the end of the first quarter, maybe well into the second quarter, something like that. It was just, oh my God.
Can we also acknowledge once again, Todd Gurley's back to being Todd Gurley.
When they give him the ball,
played 67%. Of the snaps, and they didn't need him in the fourth quarter. Exactly. Now the week before they were getting blasted, so like he didn't really get the ball because they were getting trucked by the Ravens. But in the week before that, I mean, listen, I feel more confident now in Todd Gurley because there's no committee situation going on here. The Rams sort of were good to their word. They said they wanted to sort of stretch things out and get him into a point during the stretch run here where he was going to be 100% and they could utilize him and lean on him. And I feel like they are doing that.
Well, if they get behind against Seattle or Dallas or San Francisco,
I get it. But I mean, Seattle's defense is not like so great. I feel like they're going to be competitive in that game. They'll beat the Cowboys. That'll be a competitive game. The Rams don't have to worry about that. And Gurley will crush the Cowboys. Yes, still bitter about that. And then in the final week, I mean, San Francisco, that's a rough one there. But I feel like they're going to lean on Gurley, man. And they didn't really need to do it yesterday, and he still had a big game.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see. I mean, again,
you guys don't seem convinced.
No, because Sean McVay has not given us reason to trust him.
And not only that, it's just when they get behind, Gurley's not catching any passes. It's not like he's catching the same level of passes that he has in years past. So, yeah.
Right. There you go. I have been touting the Devontae Parker breakout season for a few weeks now, and he really exploded on Sunday in that game for the Dolphins against the Eagles. Is this for real, or is he just playing with our emotions?
Well, no, dude. He's been doing it long enough now where it's absolutely real. This offense in Miami is so much better with Ryan Fitzpatrick. Oh, by the way, he's got a revenge game against the Jets coming up next week. But he has really helped make Devontae Parker a thing where, I mean, he's in your lineup every week because he's probably a flex. Maybe he's your 2. But this guy has been giving you double digits every single week.
Right. Now, I get for this year, right? When I say for real, like next year we're going to buy into Devontae Parker.
He'll be a free agent.
Is he going to be? Yeah. Is he going to be with the Dolphins? I don't even know.
You think the Dolphins re-sign him?
Maybe.
I think they probably might.
They might re-sign him.
I mean, they're definitely going to go out and get some more weapons.
They're probably not going to have Ryan Fitzpatrick at quarterback, right? Like.
I will say this too, guys. Going on the Philadelphia side of things. And this happens all the time, and I've talked to you about it and stuff like that, because you guys know I run these spreadsheets for the home and road stuff. This year, the difference in Philadelphia's defense at home as opposed to on the road is ridiculous. I had Ryan Fitzpatrick listed as a sleeper this week in my column, and I had people on Twitter saying, why is Fitzpatrick against the Eagles a good play? Because the Eagles are terrible on the road. Like, as good as this defense, this is an elite defense when they're on their home field. When they are away from the link, they stink. So anybody who's thinking of streaming Daniel Jones next week, don't do it, because he is in an awful spot in Philadelphia. But when Philadelphia is on the road, they are extremely beatable and vulnerable.
Real quick back to Parker.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously he goes 7-159 too. Next 3 games: Jets, Giants, Bengals.
The schedule is so nice.
Devontae Parker is a league winner.
I was just going to say he's a
league winner.
I saw that yesterday. The schedule is so nice for him in the playoffs.
He's got double-digit targets now in 4 straight games. They don't have anybody else since Preston Williams went down. They don't have anybody else to throw to.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
Although Patrick Laird had another 40 receiving yards and scored a
touchdown. Well, Balaj got hurt.
Shout out to Pete Overzet.
Right?
Balaj got hurt, which opened the door.
Pete Overzet was a week early on Patrick Laird.
Man. Yeah, Kalen Balaj, who I think the Dolphins.
He got hurt in that game.
Is that what it is?
Yeah, he got hurt.
I was hoping that the Dolphins just finally decided, we've seen enough.
No, he got hurt.
Well, you saw the 3 carry for 0 stat line for him and the 1 catch for 0 stat line.
I mean, that could have been a regular game.
Like, yeah, whatever.
That could have been a regular game. Who knew? Is James Washington a thing now? Like, it seems like he and Devlin Hodges have a nice little connection.
They were hunting together over the weekend.
So, you may as well throw the ball to your hunting buddy, right?
The whole hunting buddy narrative, right?
I mean, Washington has been a guy that I've been on for a few weeks now, and, I mean, he's looked great. I mean, he has given you double-digit fantasy points in all but one game since Week 9. He's given you 19 against the Rams in Week 10, 18 against Cincinnati last week, and then yesterday had over 21. He's got Arizona this week, which is a really good matchup. Then you got Buffalo, Tre'Davious White. That could be an issue. And then the Jets. But we also have to keep in mind he's been doing this mostly without Juju. So we'll see what happens when Juju returns from that knee and concussion.
The thing is, they just have been so banged up. They haven't gotten anything out of Vance McDonald this year. He's just been a complete dud for them.
Yeah.
James Conner's been out. I mean, they just really haven't had many other receivers to go to. But it has been nice to see Washington put together some of the talent and pop that we've seen in preseason and regular season games when it matters.
So my argument, though, in favor of James Washington is that Devlin Hodges looks like preseason Mason Rudolph, right? The guy who will stand back there and say, bleep it, I'm going deep, and just chuck it, right? Yeah. And that's the thing. And then, Washington's not doing this on a ton of targets, right? I mean, he had 4 targets yesterday. He had that one ridiculous catch where he was being interfered with and dragged down, and he somehow catches it. That, to me, gives me some hope that James Washington can actually – and look, I'm not telling you to play him as your wide receiver 2 or anything like that, right? He's a flex play. But it just feels like this is a little bit different. I mean, Devlin Hodges comes in, he steals Rudolph's job, he steals Rudolph's best friend. I mean, what's next?
He's going to steal his girl.
Right? I mean, that's the only thing left.
Can we also agree now that when a number 1 quarterback in the National Football League goes down, teams should go to the number 3 quarterback to replace him and not the number 2?
That's obvious.
Because we've seen Nick Mullins, we've seen Devlin Hodges,
David,
and we've seen
David Blur. Man.
Forget about number 2 quarterbacks. You go right to the 3rd string guy.
Just go to 3. Just go to 3.
That's it.
That's all it is. Last big question of the week. Why does Bruce Arians hate us? I mean Ronald Jones.
Dude, I had Ronald Jones in my DFS lineup yesterday, and I was loving it. I'm thinking, oh, man, he's a great bargain, blah, 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 blah. And then, I'm watching, I'm like, Peyton Barber touchdown. Oh, great, here we go. Peyton Barber touchdown. Now, I did hear that Arians had benched Rojo because he missed a blitz, right? And then and that was basically the end of that. I don't know.
I'm just rolling my eyes because Peyton. I mean,
I hate the Buccaneers' backfield. It drives me absolutely out of my freaking mind.
I remember earlier this year, Adam Rank pulled up a play where Peyton Barber missed a blitz pickup, and he was still in the game. After that, it's just there's no consistency with Bruce Arians. And at this point, it's over.
And Arians did say a few weeks ago, Ronald Jones has earned the starting job. He's earned more touches in the backfield, blah, 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 blah. And now we had to deal with the Peyton Barber crap. So
yeah.
I mean, just it was that first touchdown the Bucs scored, you see it's Peyton Barber, and you're like, that's not great.
No.
Whatever. Then he scores a second touchdown. Then he gets the 2-point conversion. It was what are we doing?
And then, so they have the Colts coming up. Now,
I don't know that I'd start either of those guys.
That's gonna be an interesting matchup, and we could talk about that on Wednesday and Friday as well, because the Colts defense is really good.
Yeah.
And Jameis Winston did it again to us.
Ronald Jones with the ultimate Kalen Balazs stat line of 6 carries for 8 yards.
Yeah.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Jameis did it again to us.
Sweet.
Right?
Jameis.
I mean, the Buccaneers won the game. They scored a lot of points. Jameis was bad, and now he's at home against the Colts, whose defense is good.
Yeah. I don't want any part of certainly no part of the Tampa Bay running game next week.
Yeah.
0 parts.
You got to think about Jameis though.
And
even the Bucs too, like those wide receivers. There's never an hey, they had an okay game. It's either they were out of this world or bad. You know, it's like Chris Godwin killed you this week. Mike Evans probably killed you this week, and Brashard Perriman and O.J. Howard.
Yeah,
really.
This is the 4th straight week Mike Evans is just basically hit his floor. He's had 4 catches in 4 straight games now.
I mean, you want to talk about
Perriman.
just highs and peaks and valleys, man. Like Mike Evans.
That was the roller coaster that makes your stomach feel bad.
He's been peaks and valleys.
Just up and down all freaking.
But when he hits that peak, it's a league or a week winning peak pretty much.
But when he doesn't, he kills you.
Yeah. Oh man.
The Buccaneers have driven us quite mad this year.
It's very true. Very, very true.
All right. So now that we got that out of the way, let's look back sort of at some of the big questions of the regular season, at least some of the ones that I feel like are some of the big questions of the regular season. And we'll go position by position, starting at quarterback. And,
look at that transition.
Hey, look at that. We talk about Jameis, so it seems only perfect to ask, can we consider what Jameis Winston is having to be a good fantasy season? I mean, right now, you look at him, as we sit here and talk, he is the QB9, right? The 3650 approximately passing yards, pretty good. 22 touchdowns, not bad.
Look at the next
20
number.
interceptions, garbage.
Yes.
Awful.
Yeah, how many
But
fumbles
he is
does
the
have this year,
QB9, right? And you want to talk about highs and lows, like I don't know. Is this a good fantasy season for Jameis Winston?
Jameis has only lost 5 fumbles. I mean, come on. Just
It's
5.
It's not a good fantasy season.
Daniel Jones would kill for that.
Yeah, I know exactly. It's really not. It's not a good. It's because like having a good fantasy season is having a quarterback that you can go out there and you know what, every week he's not going to kill you. Right? I mean, even if he has a bad game, it's not a game-killing performance. Like yesterday, he had a game-killing performance. I mean, he didn't even score 11 points, and the Jaguars' defense was ripe for the picking. Now, I get it. The Buccaneers had some success there on the ground, of course, with Peyton Barber. The defense played tremendous, but
the Jags' offense didn't move the ball at all to keep them throwing.
Yeah. But you've got Indianapolis. Indianapolis' defense is good. Okay, their defense is pretty good. So I don't know if I could trust him. Then you're at Detroit, which obviously he's going to be a top 10 play. And then Houston at home, and Houston's defense has been bad against quarterbacks too. So I feel like the only week where the matchup doesn't sort of favor him is this week against the Colts, which means that Jameis is going to have 25 points. Because that's kind of what Jameis has been too, right? It's like, the matchup's not great this week. Boom, big performance. Oh, great matchup for Jameis this week. Like, what the hell happened?
I feel like I'm done sticking up for Jameis. I mean, every time I try to vouch for Jameis, he just implodes.
Look, Jameis is what he is in the NFL, right? I mean, he's going to always be turnover prone and just head scratchingly bad for some games. But the dude has thrown for over 300 yards in 8 of his last 10 games. I mean, for fantasy,
that's
for
great.
Fantasy, it's not been terrible.
I also feel like part of the reason he throws for 300 yards so often is because he gives the ball away so much, and the Bucs are behind. And which is really why. I joked early in the year that I used to give away what I called the Mark Bulger Award, and I feel like I should rename it to the Jameis Winston
Absolutely.
Award.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely has to be renamed.
All right. So a couple of quarterbacks who were underwhelming, to say the least, this year: Carson Wentz, Baker Mayfield. Is there a way that next year, when it comes to draft time, we can sort of kind of excuse away what happened and maybe make a case for drafting them?
With Wentz, I definitely think you can, just because of all of their injuries at receiver. I mean, there was weeks where he was just throwing to nobodies out there. It was good to get Alshon back last week, and we saw what happened when he actually has a decent number one receiver.
I mean, Miami, too. Miami's defense stinks, but I will tell you this. He's got the Giants coming up this week. That's a good play, especially at home. So Wentz was one of those guys where, he was kind of a borderline QB1 this week because he hadn't really been doing much, but then when you heard that most of his assets were going to be back, although Ertz didn't do much, Goddard came out and had a bunch of targets, that he was a safer play, and I feel like people should feel safe to start him coming up this week as well in the first week of the fantasy playoffs because the Giants' defense is that bad, which is why I loved Aaron Rodgers yesterday. And Wentz is somebody that when the matchup is good, I feel like you can stream him. He's never going to be a top 5 quarterback, but I mean, he's got the Giants and the Redskins the next 2 weeks. Then he's got the Cowboys in week 16, so maybe you would fade him there. But the next 2 weeks, I mean, he's certainly worth a look.
I mean, yeah. I look at him for next year though, right? Because he had a couple really good years, but he got hurt. And that was sort of the concern. Like, okay, can we keep Carson Wentz healthy for the majority of the year? And this year he's stayed healthy. Everyone around him, as you mentioned, Graham, has sort of fallen.
Yeah, man. When you're throwing deep balls to Matt Collins and Nelson Aguilar as your number one receiver some weeks, it's not what you're looking for.
J-Jaw scored his first career touchdown yesterday.
Yep.
The Arthega
Whiteside.
When that pass was thrown, I was like, please go to Zach Ertz. Please go to Zach Ertz.
Ertz had a bad game.
He was a no-show.
Ertz dropped a touchdown yesterday. He did not look right, and obviously he was playing with the hamstring injury.
Yeah. So with Baker though, I mean, how are we feeling about Baker going into next year?
Baker, look,
he's going to get drafted as a QB too.
Yeah, Baker does not deserve the same excuses that Carson has because there was a period of time. I think Baker's picked it up in recent weeks for sure. He's looked a little bit more like himself, but first 6 to 7 games of the season, Baker was bad. I mean, Freddie Kitchens and their offensive line obviously didn't do him any favors either, but Baker was shaky in the pocket, just did not look like he was seeing the field well at all, and it showed. Now he's picked up a little bit here recently. I think he's picked up a little bit better. He's got some of his confidence back, but at the same time, there's not a lot of excuses you could make for the Browns' really disappointing start to this season. I mean, they've turned it around a bit, but man, it's there's not many excuses I don't think you can make for Baker.
They're going to look different next year, right? I mean, Freddie Kitchens right now seems like he's trending like he's not going to be the head coach next year.
More than likely.
Which means, ostensibly a new play caller is coming next year.
Their biggest issue is offensive line. It's like, what can you do in one offseason to completely revamp your offensive line at this point?
And speaking of the Browns, too, and Baker, I mean, I feel like, the industry really liked him because of what they did in the offseason. But one of the things they did in the offseason was add OBJ, and that was the biggest move. I mean, is OBJ on that list of biggest busts in fantasy football this season? You don't hear about him anymore.
Yeah.
Jarvis Landry is the best fantasy receiver in Cleveland.
Yeah, no, he definitely is. I would be curious to kind of go back and try to watch more and just try to figure out, how did this happen? Is this – because I don't imagine Odell Beckham is any less of a football player now than he was when he was in New York. Is this that they're not scheming him open well enough? Is it that Baker just can't hit him when he gets open?
You have Odell Beckham Jr. There is at no point in any game should he be quiet. Should you not hear his name?
Right.
That is it's complete coaching malpractice. The fact that he's seen fewer than 10 targets and over half of his games this year is just insanity to me.
Let me give you let me give you some of the players who are averaging more points per game than Odell
Devontae
Beckham
Parker
Jr.
is, that's for sure.
Cole Beasley, Will Fuller, Tyler Boyd, Christian Kirk, Sterling Shepard, Devontae Parker, Michael Gallup, Golden Tate. It's ridiculous. Yeah. He's averaging 12.4 points per game. That's it. I mean, he's barely averaging more points than Curtis Samuel and DK Metcalf.
Beckham had, obviously not last week notwithstanding, he had a terrible game against the Steelers, but before that, it kind of just seemed like Beckham kept hitting his floor. He'd have 5 catches for 60 yards and just no touchdowns. So the touchdowns have not been there, and they've really not been there for this whole Browns passing offense this year. So he maybe has gotten a little bit unlucky in the touchdown department, but the fact that he's just been quiet and just not featured in this offense, there's just points and times in these games where you don't hear from him.
Right? And he hasn't. And not only have you not heard from him on the field, I mean, when he was in New York, he was in the media, in the headlines every single week for one reason or another.
I think this has been good for his career and mental health. I think this has been a lot
he's
better.
become invisible.
I mean, it's funny because, I don't. Every once in a while, you still see pictures of the boat trip that comes up, and I'm like, look, you can't blame this on Odell anymore. He's not even there anymore. Leave the boat trip alone.
Yep.
Not that it was his fault that they lost that playoff game anyway, but whatever. We talked about Gardner Minshew a little bit earlier. I guess he's draftable next year. I mean, how high? I mean, he's 10, 11? I mean, he's definitely a double-digit round pick, but he's draftable next year, right?
For sure. I think so for sure. And I mean, it'll be interesting to see what the Jags do and what direction they take, because Doug Marrone he's walking. He's a dead man walking there in Jacksonville. They're going to make a change. Their offensive line, I think. I mean, I know yesterday they played poorly, but it's not like they haven't invested in it. It's just they've been a little bit banged up over the last couple of years. And obviously DJ Chark DJ Chark's become a number 1 wide receiver, and they've got now Chris Conley.
Let's not get into him yet.
D.D. Westbrook. I mean, there's so many pieces here for this Jags offense to be nice. It's just I want some consistency here.
Yeah, I think that's kind of the biggest thing. Running backs. Okay, so last year I was stumping for Christian McCaffrey as the number 1 player overall. And I honestly started that conversation partially because I just wanted there to be some debate during the offseason.
I like where you're going with this, Bob.
You were right.
I'm going to start this again right now. Dalvin Cook is the 1.01 next year.
I love it.
Dalvin Cook is the number 1 overall pick next year.
I love that. I absolutely love that.
Any major objections?
Nope.
I'll say this. And Marcus, we've been working together long enough where I always bring up the magical season.
Right.
That's what McCaffrey's having right now.
That's part of why I'm not. And I think Christian McCaffrey's still a top 3 pick next year.
So he'll be the consensus number 1. Will he finish number 1? History tells you, unless you're LaDainian Tomlinson, or Marshall Faulk. I mean, maybe he is that good, but typically that's not going to happen. So if I have the number 1 overall pick next year, do I draft Dalvin Cook? I'm thinking about it.
I mean, I still think Christian McCaffrey's a top 3 pick next year. I think he's still going to be very good next year. But no, I mean, it goes back to what our friend Bob Harris said to us during the preseason. Don't draft last year's best team, right? Don't think that Christian McCaffrey is going to repeat because he's doing phenomenal things right now.
Yeah.
Don't think he can repeat that next year. Dalvin Cook is having a great season on a team that really wants to run the football and is really trying to make him the centerpiece of what they do. I feel like I don't know that he's quite hit his. He's maybe close to his ceiling, but I don't think he's quite hit his ceiling.
The only difference between Cook and McCaffrey this year is McCaffrey is just so much more involved as a receiver.
Right.
I mean, yesterday McCaffrey had a terrible game.
Yeah, he did.
He scored 17 points because he caught 7 balls. You know what I mean?
Like 2 weeks ago, he scored 30 without scoring a touchdown.
Right. Dalvin Cook rarely catches 7 passes in a game, so I think that's really the only difference between the two is because McCaffrey is a low-end receiver too for fantasy combined with the RB1. But I really like that call. I like the idea of Dalvin Cook being the RB1 next year.
We really, as an industry and as analysts, we really sort of. I try to do it sometimes too, but a lot of times, anybody who says that they're beating their chest because they said Lamar Jackson was going to break out this year, dude. Everyone had Lamar Jackson. Everyone liked Kyler Murray. Everyone liked Chris Godwin. But sometimes you got to look outside of the box a little bit. And if we learned that this season has been difficult.
You say everybody liked Lamar Jackson. I got
Who didn't like Lamar Jackson?
A bit of flack for taking him in some of my leagues. I'm just saying some casual players.
Lamar Jackson was the obvious breakout quarterback this season. I think most people with a brain in their head who watch football knew that.
Yeah. I'm also okay with taking victory laps because we get so many things wrong.
Exactly.
Let's celebrate the things we get right.
Has there been a more difficult season to predict? I feel like the preseason predictions. I know personally, I nailed a whole bunch of them. Obviously, not going to get everything right. Marcus did as well. Graham did as well. But when you get into these matchups, and I'm thinking of Drew Brees, for example, over the last few weeks, the matchup's been good. He hadn't done anything. Alvin Kamara's been a disappointment. We've seen so many matchups go sideways this year that it's becoming more and more difficult.
Weeks are getting harder.
That whole saying, what is it, that you trust the process? I don't trust the process. That's flawed. I'll follow the process and pray, but it is what it is. Nick Foles was a really good streamer this week until he wasn't.
Yeah. Well, until he wasn't.
So,
all right. So if we are sort of leaning toward Dalvin Cook as the number 1 overall pick, how many running backs go in round 1?
I saw this question. The first
all of them
that immediately popped in my head is, who would you rather have, Zeke or Derrick Henry next year in the first round? They're both going to probably be first-round picks, I think.
Wait, is Derrick Henry, he is Rodney Dangerfield right now. He gets no respect, and the guy, all he does every week is shred.
Yeah, he does.
I would say Derrick Henry.
I know, but I'm a homer.
I get that. Yeah. But I just only because, one, the Cowboys are going to pay Dak, right? Dak's going to get his contract. And this is an offense that's sort of transitioning to being more Dak-centric. The Titans are going to have a new quarterback next year, right?
It might be Tannehill.
Maybe.
They might franchise him.
Maybe.
Tannehill's played extremely well.
He's played very well. So maybe it is Ryan Tannehill next year. But Ryan Tannehill's not a dude that you're going to have him stand back there and sling the ball 35, 40 times a game. This is still going to be a very Derrick Henry-heavy offense.
All I'm saying is I think Derrick Henry's kind of had the season we all expected Zeke to have. Zeke's more involved in the passing game, but at the same time, Henry's rushing floor has just been just absolutely absurd. Over the last 3 weeks, 23, 188, 2 touchdowns. Week 12, 19 for 159, 2 touchdowns. This past week, 26 carries, 149 yards, also caught 3 balls for 17 yards and scored again.
And he's become a set it and forget it.
Oh, no doubt. Absolutely.
He's locked in every single week.
I think it'll be really interesting to see if Henry's a late first-round pick next year and if he goes over Zeke.
Okay.
I don't think he will in most leagues because Zeke has the name value and people still hate on Derrick Henry.
All right.
Well, who goes first next year, Barkley or Henry?
I think Barkley.
Yeah, Barkley.
I think Barkley does.
I think I'd still take Barkley.
So, all right, so let's figure this. Okay, so we're going Dalvin Cook.
Yes. Christian McCaffrey.
CMC. Zeke probably stays in the first round, right? Barkley probably stays in the first round.
I think Derrick Henry deserves to be in that conversation.
I think so. Nick Chubb goes in the first round, right?
Well, is Kareem Hunt on the roster? Is Kareem Hunt on the roster?
I'd rather have a bunch of receivers over Nick Chubb in the first round.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So we got 4. We got 4 for sure, right?
I know Kamara hasn't scored in 7 weeks, 8 weeks, something like that. But I'd rather have Kamara over Chubb.
Kamara's going to be a first-round pick next year.
Okay.
I really feel like he will be.
Leonard Fournette.
I feel like Fournette's going to be a first-round pick next year. Josh Jacobs might sneak into the first round.
Josh Jacobs feels like a guy on the turn potentially.
Maybe right. Yeah. Exactly.
He feels like a guy on the turn. Aaron Jones, you can't count on to score double-digit touchdowns again.
I'll give you one. I mean, Melvin Gordon. Melvin Gordon has been a first-round pick for a long time, and now he's back to sort of being Melvin Gordon.
Well, where's Melvin Gordon playing?
I don't know where he's going to play. Right. But say he ends up with the Texans, or maybe he's with the Bucks. I don't know. I mean, just teams that might need a running back. He might end up being in the conversation. He might be.
Yeah, he'll be in the conversation. I still think he ends up probably a second-round guy for me.
Okay.
Yeah, I think so too.
I mean, so we're looking at what 4 for
sure.
I mean, possibly 6 guys in the first round. I mean, but 4 for sure. 6 guys. And
Michael Thomas will be in the first round, no question, next season at wide receiver. I don't know that Nuke makes it. I guess we'll see.
Yeah.
But
he'll make it.
You think so?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, look, I think when the dust settles and we look at the season Nuke had, he'll make it.
Mm-hmm.
He'll make. I mean, the only real difference is that the touchdown numbers haven't been quite as ridiculous, and I think lately he's starting to pick things up.
I think Kelsey will be back in that conversation again too, just because
peace of mind.
Yeah, just the peace of mind factor.
Peace of mind.
And Kittle. I think Kittle will.
Yeah, Kittle's actually had a pretty good year too.
Yeah.
Yep.
Real quick before we get out of this running back conversation. We talked about Mahomes earlier and whether or not
we didn't mention Aaron Jones.
He's been this. I said he's not going to have the touchdown number, so I wouldn't touch him in the first round.
Okay.
Saquon, disappointment. Is it going too far to say he's been a bust this year? Just because of I mean, this is a guy who was the number 1 overall pick on a lot of leagues.
Yeah, he was.
I think for where you drafted him, absolutely, he's been a bust.
I mean, he's been hurt. He hasn't played well.
Yeah. I definitely think so. I mean, he had over 100 yards from scrimmage yesterday. Didn't score.
He hasn't run for 100 yards since week 2.
But, yeah, that's the thing is, you can't predict injuries, and we don't know how unhealthy Barclay was
exactly.
when he came back.
Right.
He could have been playing at significantly less than 100% after that high ankle injury.
He came back very
He's
quickly.
averaging 15.5 points per game, which is 12th right now among running backs.
The big thing for Barclay this year is the long runs have, and this is something I think we talked about in the offseason, but Barclay had a ton of long runs last year of those 40-plus yarders, and those have evaporated. I mean, he was at 5 yards per carry last year. He's down at 4.0 this year, and a large part of that is because the big plays and the big runs just really haven't been there with the same consistency. And obviously, too, the Giants just have not been a very good offense, and if they're not in the red zone very often, Barkley's not going to be getting those scoring opportunities, especially if he's not ripping off long runs.
Yeah, I mean, I think also part of it is the Giants. They've been playing from behind a lot too. Daniel Jones has been a turnover machine.
Yep.
That has all sort of worked against Saquon this year. Wide receivers. We talked briefly about Michael Thomas. I mean, obviously he's a first-round pick. Does he go in the top 4?
I think he should be the 3rd pick next year, behind McCaffrey and Cook. I think with the way they feed him the rock and how good, just damn good every single week. He's so consistent every single week. I think he should be the 3rd overall pick.
He's coming off his worst game of the year.
Yeah.
And I mean, he gave you double digit, but that was his worst game of the year.
Right.
He's just a stud, man.
So he has been just. I mean, he's been this year's like Devontae Adams, where every week it's great.
What other players would you rather have next year, other than Cook and McCaffrey? Who would you rather have?
I'm sorry, I'm taking Zeke. I'm a running backs guy, man. I'm a running backs guy. So,
would you take Zeke in the top 3?
I'd be thinking about it. Yeah.
Man,
yep. I'd be thinking about it.
Yeah, there's a few other players I'd rather have than Zeke. I'd rather have Henry than Zeke. Yeah. I think especially next year.
How dare you?
So Michael Thomas in the top 3. I mean, I don't hate it. I really don't.
I just can't find anybody else I'd rather have over him. I mean, he's been the number 1 no-brainer receiver every single week for fantasy.
Right.
Yeah. Brees will be back.
Back.
Okay, well.
And it's not like
Drew Brees is an old man too. I mean, God bless him. He's great. He's a Hall of Famer.
Here's the thing,
it's not like their plans are going to change either. They're not going to turn into this offense that goes away from him.
And the thing about Michael Thomas is he's not necessarily. I won't say. How do I describe it? He's definitely a volume guy, right? Like, he gets so many targets, so many catches. Yes. He's not a huge yards per catch guy. He's not a huge air yards guy because that's just not what they want from him. That's not how they use him.
Yep.
But just the fact that he had 100 catches before Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
Before Thanksgiving. That's insane.
Yeah, he's going to shatter Marvin Harrison's record.
I mean, so that alone, that keeps his floor pretty solid.
Yep.
So, man, that part. Who goes first between Chris Godwin or Mike Evans next year?
Jeez. I mean,
I don't know.
Right now,
it'll be wrong. Whatever I choose.
But they both go in the first round, right?
No, I don't know about that.
Really?
I don't know about.
Well, Mike Evans was not a first round.
I don't know about
neither one was a first round pick this past.
Godwin's averaging more points this year. He's averaging like 2 more points per game.
Whomever you choose, it'll be wrong.
Yeah, exactly.
That's how this year has gone between these two guys. I think it'll be interesting to see because I think Nuke will go number 2 behind Michael Thomas. I think you can all make a conversation for guys like Cooper Kupp and that talk. Devontae Adams will be in that talk again.
Who's back to being Devontae Adams now?
No doubt. Devontae Adams has been amazing since he came back from injury. It's been the same guy. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. I think they'll both be top 15 picks again.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I saw that because they're both sitting there right now at 2 and 3, and it has been. It's been roulette with those guys, right? One guy goes off, the other guy goes off. I guess this past week, really, neither of them really went off.
Right.
But, we're going to have that same headache again next year.
Yeah, where are we drafting Antonio Brown next year when he's with the Patriots?
Not at all again. I have Antonio Brown on 0 points.
I'm trying to will that to happen.
Yeah.
Because, and again, I don't like Antonio Brown as a person, but imagine him coming back. It would be such a ridiculously – it would just be a sick NFL story. Everyone would be all over it. He'd join the Patriots, who everyone hates.
I don't think it'd be a sick NFL. I do not want Antonio Brown to come back. I don't want to talk about him.
I
want him to go to the XFL.
The publicity would be ridiculous.
I feel like I wouldn't draft him because I can't deal.
He's getting drafted next year.
Oh, he will get. No, he absolutely
drafted.
Look, man. If just whispering the name Josh Gordon on the wind sends fantasy Twitter into a tizzy, Antonio Brown coming back, he is going to get. Look, people picked up Rob Gronkowski.
I know they did, yeah.
Thinking he might come back when he was just announcing that he was having a Super Bowl party, right? Like Antonio Brown's going.
I've picked up Antonio Brown in some leagues like this year because the Patriots are awful on offense right now, man. They could really use him and just. Well, we'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see what happens.
All right, so let's finish this up with tight ends. Do we have to?
Yes.
Yes,
Marcus, you have to.
Are you trying to will in a team tight end position?
I'm really not because I really sort of abhor in my soul this idea of it's difficult to predict, so let's just get rid of it. Man, this is it just feels like the umpteenth year in a row. Somebody asked me when's the last time tight end was solid week to week, and I was like 1987. I don't know. Right? We know we've got Kelsey. He's gonna be fine. We've got Kittle, who's been pretty good so far this year. I guess we have Ertz.
Hunter Henry. Yeah.
Hunter Henry's been good.
Evan Ingram was fantastic before he got hurt.
Austin Hooper has had a very good season.
He actually leads the position in points per game.
Yeah. We had Darren Waller at the start of the year, and then he sort of vanished for a long time.
Came back yesterday, though.
He came back yesterday.
Yep.
Had a nice game. But, after a quick start, Darren Waller just kind of disappeared from our lives for a while. I guess Mark Andrews next year, maybe?
Yep. That's another guy that a lot of people in the industry, including us, we were on him.
Yeah.
And he's really played very well.
Yeah. It'll be. I have a feeling there's going to be just no good late round options next year. Because we're just looking at a position where there's no middle class, and now we've seen Delaney Walker, Jordan Reed, sort of the guys that we were Greg Olsen too. These guys are getting older and just not playing, getting hurt, and not performing.
I will say this: we have gotten some more depth at the position lately because you've had Ryan Griffin sort of emerge. Jack Doyle is reemerging because of the injuries in Indianapolis. We had Gerald Everett for a bit, and then Tyler Higbee because, Cardinals. So we're seeing a little. Jacob Hollister has been very good as well. So we're starting to see a little bit more depth at the position where it's not as difficult to fill it. Jared Cook's been very good as well. But yeah, you guys are right overall. That this is going to be a position where you're either going to be targeting it early or you're going to punt it until the late round.
Jared Cook might literally be the only late round tight end choice next year. That's out there. Because Austin Hooper, Hunter Henry, who of these guys is going to go before go after the 7th, 8th round? Because Mark Andrews, they're all top 6, 7th round picks.
Do we take a stab at a Noah Fant?
Yeah, that's it.
A T.J. Hawkinson, maybe.
Yeah. Njoku will be back next year.
Njoku will be back.
Could be back hopefully soon.
The Ballad of Chris Herndon. Do we sing that song again next year?
Oh man, I had him on the waiver wire list for 16. I feel like 16 weeks in a row.
Literally, I feel like this podcast, for at least a month, we were like, "Hey, Chris Herndon
might be back.
Chris Herndon's back this week."
Yep. Chris Herndon's season lasted 30 minutes.
It really did.
By the way, Marcus, you mentioned 1987.
Uh-huh.
Can you guys tell me who the top scoring fantasy tight end in 1987 was?
1987. Let's see.
Don't look, Barfield.
No, I'm not gonna look.
Barfield wasn't even born yet.
I was 10 years old. I'm going to say 87.
You want a hint?
Sure.
He's a Paisan.
Mark Bavaro.
Boom! Yeah. Look at Eddie. Do you know who Mark Bavaro is? You weren't born either.
He was a giant, went to Notre Dame. Of course.
That's right in Eddie's wheelhouse, man. What are you talking about?
The number 2 tight end that year was some guy named Robert Awalt, and then Todd Christensen. Kellen Winslow.
Todd Christensen.
Mickey Schuler, who was a Jet. You remember Mickey Schuler? Doug Cosby, who was a Cowboy. Steve Jordan,
who's a kid, Cameron Jordan.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. How about that?
The kid's a pretty good pass rusher.
Going back in time. How about that? Mark Bavaro.
Man, Mark Bavaro. I hated him.
Well, I mean,
because the Giants and the 49ers would play in the playoffs. Like I couldn't stand him and Phil McConkey. I hated Phil McConkey.
Stephen Baker, the touchdown maker, hated him too. Because I was a tri-state area Cowboys fan, so I hate the Giants. So.
There you go. So there you go. That's sort of our regular season recap. We'll certainly talk plenty more about what the year was as we get through the end of this fantasy season, whatever. Of course, Wednesday we'll start looking ahead to the fantasy playoffs because, they're starting pretty much in every league. So quick rundown of the waiver wire options for this week. James Washington is out there in a whole lot of leagues. Look, there's a chance Juju may be back this week, but we talked about the injuries in that wide receiver core. James Washington's still going to get targets. Jack Doyle is out there. We all need tight end help. Jack Doyle is out there.
The only reason I put Zach Pascal in here is because he had a big game. T.Y. had a setback, and they're playing the Bucs next week.
Not to mention that, for whatever it's worth, I believe Chester Rogers.
Yeah, he got hurt too. So I mean, volume, right?
Yeah, Paris Campbell. They tried to get Paris Campbell back off that hand injury. They didn't get him either yesterday.
Yeah. By the way, Adam Schefter just tweeted as we're sitting here. Initial test revealed that Colts wide receiver Chester Rogers suffered a likely season-ending fracture in his knee Sunday.
Colts are so thin at receiver.
Man, they are so thin at receivers.
Oh my God! Wait a minute. Antonio Brown has made a post on his Instagram.
Oh, no.
I'm starting to question if Robert Kraft wants to win. This is a business. You have rumors of your Hall of Fame quarterback wanting to leave as well as already losing your all-pro tight end. I would assume that you would want to improve your offensive threats, which are obviously lacking. Tom and Josh have nothing to work with. Swallow your pride, RKK. A report came out that you had fingers up your beep during the spa. Just let us sign AB and you can win another Super Bowl? What is this? What is going on here? What? No, forget it. AB's not coming back. I'm not sure this is a Super Bowl winning. What is Antonio Brown? He's out of his mind. This would have been the perfect opportunity for him to go out and say, again, I'm so sorry of what my behavior was. I shouldn't have done it. I can come back and help this team, Robert Kraft. All you have to do is reach out. Give me a phone call. Did he really do this? I just saw this on social. Hang on. I got to make sure this is even real. Wait a minute. Hold on a second.
In other news,
hang on.
Zach Pascal's out there. Ryan Tannehill is available on a whole lot of leagues, and we talked about how great he is. The schedule, actually, the next couple of weeks, 2 of the next 3 weeks in the playoffs are actually pretty good for Ryan Tannehill. So he might be a guy to kind of help you get through. I put Vance McDonald here, or did you put Vance McDonald here?
Everybody Vance now.
Right? I mean, look, he has not done much of anything. He was a guy that a lot of people, myself included, thought would be kind of a nice sleeper pick this year. That has not at all happened, but they play the Cardinals next week. So if you're going to start Vance McDonald, next week is the time.
The flowchart lives, man.
Flowchart lives. Tyler Higbee crushed against the Cardinals.
Tyler Higbee had like 90 yards and 6 catches for a score in the first half.
Right.
That there is like the ultimate in like, it just doesn't matter because Vance McDonald's done nothing.
That is literally stealing right now as tight ends against the Cardinals, so do that. Robbie Anderson, because the Jets, they play the Dolphins next week. I know that the Jets let us down in a huge you know what? God. I went into the week, I said it I think last week on this podcast, that like it just felt like a game the Jets were set up to lose, and they did. Well, and they did.
Yeah, we went through this whole podcast without tilting the Jets yesterday. They scored 6 freaking points against the Bengals.
What did I say last week? I said, is this a trap game for I mean, I don't know if you can have a trap game, as being a Jet and not being very good, but
they scored 30 in their 3 previous games.
I mean, I also said I felt like the Bengals were starting Andy Dalton because Zach Taylor didn't want to go winless in his first season as a head coach. So congratulations. But they're playing the Dolphins. The Jets are next week, so Robbie Anderson's back on our radar. Mike Gesicki, who's had touchdowns in back-to-back games, had a pretty good game against the Eagles last week. He is out there. Russell Gage getting a lot of targets there in Atlanta, especially after they traded Mo Sanu. He's stepped up and filled that role pretty nicely. Last couple are kind of contingent on whether the guys around them are healthy or not. Raheem Mostert, which, by the way, we haven't talked about the fact that Tevin Coleman is the starter, but he's not the best running back.
Dude, what happened
He's not
to
the
him?
starter. He got 5 carries and was
happened
he was
to him,
demoted
man?
yesterday.
Right. I mean, like, Raheem Mostert had 19 carries in the game, had a huge, 146 rushing yards and a touchdown.
He went nuts in that game. So now, like, I mean, ever since Coleman had that 4 touchdown game, remember?
Against the Panthers.
Tevin Coleman. Ever since then, goodness gracious, I hope he's sold high on
it. It doesn't matter. Like, every week, whoever the other guy is, whether it's Matt Breida, if it's Jeff Wilson, now Raheem Mostert, has been better than Tevin Coleman.
Wow.
Now, if Breida is back next week, then all bets are sort of off with Raheem Mostert.
We'll be looking at a nice 3-man committee.
Right. But
we'll have no idea.
But if there's no Matt Breida, man, go get you some Raheem Mostert and put him in your lineup. And then Tyler Higbee, similarly, if Gerald Everett is back, then not quite as excited about Higbee. But if Everett's still out again, then Higbee is kind of a nice play there. So,
well, by the way, if you want to have a laugh, go on Twitter and there's a lot of Antonio Brown.
I'm sure I will see it in my timeline as soon as we wrap up this podcast.
Yes, sir.
Which is right now.
Life hack. Just mute Antonio Brown on Twitter. There you go.
It's not a bad idea.
He blocked me, so I can't see his stuff.
Muting things is so powerful. Thank you, Twitter, for that. You made a lot of mistakes, Twitter, but that's not one of them. All right, there you go.
How about an edit button, though? I still want an edit button.
No, we don't need an edit button on Twitter. There are too many bad actors on this website anyway. Let's not give them more chances to be dishonest and deceitful. That's my 2 cents. Anyway, that's it. We are done. We appreciate you downloading and listening as always. You know the drill. Tell 2 friends to tell 2 friends. Rate, review, and remember, find someone who adds meaning to your life without subtracting cash from your wallet. We'll see you on Wednesday.